If we go back to the natural world in which we live, and which of course is the basic textbook for most thoughtful persons, we observe that nature does bestow a great deal of freedom. Nature more or less creates an adequate environment, but it is a controlled environment. It adjusts creatures to this environment, both in terms of their structures and in terms of their numbers. Nature has an interrelating system by means of which gradually two situations arise. Survival depends upon, first, strength. And as the strength pattern is gradually overgrown or outgrown, then the second factor of survival comes in, and that is judgment, wisdom. All creatures must survive because they are strong enough to survive, or they are wise enough to survive. Those which break this rule, or these rules, suffer as a consequence. In nature, that which is not strong enough physically to meet the challenge of environment perishes. And in this way, nature preserves almost indefinitely the vitality strain of practically every living creature. Only the best survives. Only the best reproduce or perpetuate. And by this means, nature, by pressing upon the environment, is able to regulate or protect the survival of the species itself. The second thing that nature tells us is that every form of life, in order to survive, has to learn. Now, it's interesting that the most basic learning which we find in nature is silent learning. Learning is not read out of books by birds and bugs. Learning is almost all through example. I remember old Chief Seton, in his nature stories, told so many tales of how nature teaches. How the little one is forever observing the way with which its adults, parents, meet the facts of life. The parents regulate, and when they have brought the young to maturity, they then demand that young person to stand on its own feet. The bird casts the little one out of the nest. It will not allow spoilage. Nature is forever telling the young creature, follow the example of the parent. Obey instinctively and inevitably. When the parent crouches down, crouch down. When the parent rushes into a thicket, rush in with it. Because all you have to do is decide you're going to disobey, and in a few minutes you'll be dead. Now, this is a harsh way of learning, but it is very adequate. And for millions of years, nature maintained the balance of species until the human being, who was like Bottom in the Midsummer Night's Dream, slow of learning, upset the entire situation. It is the human being who has very largely demoralized every other kingdom of nature on this planet. But there's always a chance to do something about it if we want to. And conservationists are trying. But conservationists do not always have nature's point of view. Nature isn't patting animals, birds, flowers, and fishes. It is teaching them. Teaching them the rules by which they must live. And as they live close to these rules, obeying the laws of their kind, they accomplish the greatest freedom that is possible in this world. Freedom is therefore the result or the reward of not making basic mistakes. It is to follow the laws of the kind, to follow the rules of the seasons, and to follow the internal instincts with which all creatures have been endowed.